Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also a best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock the potentials and guide them to succeed. Today, I'm very excited about this guest because I've been looking forward to talking to him again for a while now. And the reason why, every single time I see him speak, he has this energy that is absolutely electrifying. Every time he's on stage, I can't wait to see him there because I know he's going to entertain, and plus I know I'm going to learn a lot of stuff too. He sings, he dances too, I think. And it's just an absolute joy to see him talk, and one of those great entrepreneurs out there. He's trained thousands and thousands of people worldwide as a highly respected mentor, business coach, and also a speaker. So he's also the creator of BrainSuasion. So please welcome the coach, the legend, Les Evans.
Thank you very much, Fong. It's great to see you again, my old friend. Really good to see you and reconnect like this. Thank you so much.
It's awesome. I couldn't wait to get in touch with you again. And
likewise, especially because awesome. You guys send me a Christmas card every year.
It works. So tell us, what are you up to now? What's your passion during this period of time?
Well, I've had several projects on the go, and like you said, prior to the whole big world pandemic kind of thing, as you mentioned before, I was traveling worldwide in 24 countries, training entrepreneurs all over the world in 78 cities on, different things like marketing, branding, mindset, how to think creatively, how to build company culture, all the stuff that goes into business, which is just a lot of fun. And that was truly an honor. And then, of course, when the travel kind of shut down, we all had to shift how we did business. And I think a lot of people are online. And my big thing was to help people kind of transition online. And I had to do the same thing for myself, because as a coach and trainer, you're so used to being in front of audiences. Now you got a little screen this big instead of 1,000 people. But I still had people that I was working with as a coach individually on their businesses, mostly small to medium businesses. Actually, I really love working with small business people because you can just make so much more impact like that. And so my two biggest focuses in the last couple of years was to really help people reinvent themselves or repurpose their businesses so they could make that transition and or say add a second income, like a side hustle, for example. And then I really dove into something called neuromarketing over the last few years, which is really the science of marketing to the subconscious brain. And we can open up that, package if you want a little bit. And it's really fascinating. The only problem was I got introduced to it about 2.5 years ago, and it's on the surface, very complicated, sciencey brain technology stuff. But when you really, really break it down, and this is what I did, is I created a training called BrainSuasion, which breaks it into English so the average business person can say, oh, so that's what I do. So what neuromarketing really does is it simply makes your messaging and positioning much more brain friendly, so you can cut through the noise in the marketplace today. Because as you know, wow, these days we're just overwhelmed with information, and you really got to cut through. Like, you've got about 2 seconds, as you know, to get somebody's attention. So that's what this is focused on. Mm-hmm. It's just making your message much more deliverable and easy to understand. So that's been my focus the last 2 years. And I love it. It's fascinating.
You talk about if we wanted to open this up. Yeah, let's open that up. So what would be the main difference between this neuromarketing versus just normal marketing? And why does one need to focus more on the neural side?
Well, that's a really, really good question, because there is a distinction, and this is not eliminating traditional marketing. It kind of fine tunes it, so to speak. So here's the challenge. If you look at traditional sales methods, for example, traditional marketing methods, that stuff goes back to like when they were selling snake oil on the trail wagons, right? And you'd have the hyped up pitch and stuff like that. And so most sales and marketing efforts were always driven around like talking about features and benefits, and here's the specifications, and here's how much money it's going to save, all this logical brain stuff. So what happened about 15 years ago is scientists, you're probably familiar with something called an MRI, a magnetic resonance imaging machine.
Mhm.
Well, instead of using brain scans for a busted head, advertisers started to put customers in these things to see what part of their brains were being activated when they were looking at advertisements, for example. And what they found was astonishing. What they found is almost everything they knew from market research. So when you hear about market research, you hear about, phone surveys, questionnaires, focus groups, things like that. What they found out is that almost everything they thought was wrong.
Whoops.
So this is what's fascinating. So we have like basically 3 parts to our brain, really simple to understand. We have the mammalian brain, which is our emotional side. We have the big honking thing. This is the new brain called the neocortex right here. Give it a little sock in the head. Now it's brand new. It's very good at analytics, but it's an absolute pig gas hog on energy. And it's only responsible for 5% of the decision making. What we know now is the subconscious brain, which is buried back here in something called the amygdala. We make 95% of our buying decisions subconsciously. Mm-hmm. What most people do is they spend 95% of their time talking to the 5% of the brain that doesn't buy. So if you're always focused on logic and here's why this makes sense, Fong, your brain is just shutting right down. Mm-hmm. So this was a massive, massive discovery. So what we know now is number one, you do need your facts and figures to sell somebody because people need information to justify their decision, number one. Number two, they must be emotionally engaged with you. They've done studies where people, if they have a brain disorder, for example, or brain damage, and they can't feel emotions, they literally can't make decisions. So if you're trying to engage somebody to influence or persuade, and we all have to do that because we're in business, right? Mm-hmm. We're trying to make our case. If you don't win them over emotionally, they literally cannot make a decision. So these were other big revelations. So you have to get people emotionally engaged, and then you have to know what appeals to the primitive brain. The primitive brain is the one that, it's very simple, but it's the one that makes all the decisions. So this was really the big revelation with this stuff. So all neuromarketing does is it switches the focus to talk to the brain in a way that it understands. Mm-hmm. And the primitive brain, for example, cannot read text. So if all you have in your ad is text, you're forcing this part of the brain to work. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest drains on our energy is attention. So this thing requires attention. Even though this is only I don't know how much the brain weighs, I'm not sure. I guess it depends on if there's much up there. But here's the interesting thing. As small as this is as part of your total body mass, this thing right here uses up 30% of your caloric energy. Wow. It requires tons of oxygen and tons of glucose. And that's why we get so overwhelmed today in the information age, because this thing just can't keep up. Mm-hmm. This is an interesting fact. Like, here's my iPhone. Did you know that the average person today scrolls the length of the Empire State Building every day? And You're trying to get their attention, right? So, of course, this is why pictures, for example, visuals are much, much more important to the primitive brain. So there's a really quick 30,000 foot overview.
I'm gonna put you on the spot and also highlight your glasses. Your glasses are amazing. They're always very standoutish and very spectacular. So if you were to do a comparison between traditional marketing on those pair of glasses to neuromarketing on those pair of glasses, what would be the main difference between those two?
Very, very easy. They're singular. You spot them instantaneously. They're disruptive and they're different. Mm-hmm. See, our brain is a sorting mechanism and it hates familiarity. See, what happens is your primitive brain is constantly evaluating, do I need to pay attention to this or not? And this is an automatic process. So anytime something comes along that's familiar to it, you go, do I know that? Oh yeah, I don't have to pay attention anymore. So the minute I do something different and unusual, you're forced to pay attention. Mm-hmm. That's neuromarketing right there. I don't have them pulled up right now, but I have actual samples very disruptive images. For example, most people, well, here's a really good example. If you look at a typical advertisement, they use stock photos.
Mhm.
Our brain is so smart, it can spot a stock photo instantly, and it says, I don't need to pay attention to that. Even really pretty videos, I don't need to pay attention to it. It's too slick. It's actually the stuff that's unusual or strange. And in case you're wondering about these glasses, because I have a condition called ankylosing spondylitis, which is a type of rheumatoid arthritis, I can't get LASIK surgery, so I have to wear eyeglasses. And I thought, well, if I'm forced to wear eyeglasses, I'm going to pull in Elton John and, get something really unique. So I saw a photograph of a rock star from the 70s wearing these glasses. And I was like, what are those? And I went searching on Google, the internet, and it took me 2 years to find a pair of these. They're extremely rare.
Wow.
They're so rare, they were made in West Germany, before the wall came down. So these are vintage 1985 Alpina glasses, and they're actually 24 karat gold. So, yeah.
Oh.
So, and I have one of only 2 pairs left in the world.
Wow.
And I had custom lenses made for them. And, to go to the heart of branding, for example, and disrupting, getting people's attention, if you look like somebody, people will treat you like somebody. So I really appreciate the compliment. But I've had people pull me aside in airports, airplanes are like, who are you, right? Like, you must be a celebrity or something.
Awesome. No, I love sunglasses. So when I see a nice, cool pair of specs, I'm usually pretty interested.
Well, you can't have these ones.
I'll leave it. That's your brand. You've coached people all over the world. You also spoke all over the world. And you talked about how you love working with small businesses and getting them out of rut. What would you say are some of the most common reasons why small businesses need help?
They don't know how to differentiate themselves from their competition. That is probably the biggest challenge they have. And there's a couple different ways to do that. There's two ways to do that exactly. One of the biggest problems small businesses have in differentiating is they don't bother to set a personal standard for their business. And what I mean by that is this. I call it my Goliath theory. So you take a look, when people start businesses, they tend to look around at what everyone else is doing and they say, well, that seems to be working. Although they don't really have any proof, they kind of just assume and guess. And a lot of times false assumptions like that are really damaging to your business. So they took a look around at the competition and you say, well, there's the right way to do things. There's the wrong way to do things. There's the way the competition does things. But what they failed to do is say, this is the way we're going to do it. We're going to create our own standard. And if you do that, you set your own bar, so to speak. And that's what makes you entirely distinctive. And very few people actually do that because they think they have to rely on somebody else's standard of doing things. So one of the things I've coached people very effectively on is saying, forget the wrong way, forget the right way, forget what your competition's doing. Let's sit down and say, how are you going to do things? And I can use as an example, my late father-in-law, he did kitchen renovations in Edmonton, and he was, to a word, very particular about the way things done because he's German by birth, and that's kind of in the DNA. And so when he was doing construction jobs, I mean, the paint had to be just perfect. The switches had to be just so. There's no such thing as crooked or overpainting and things like this. And as a result, he was in demand. Like he was booked up almost 2 years in advance because he did things his way. Nobody else could copy them. So there's 2 ways to be better in business. Number one is to actually take a look at your competition and see what they're doing wrong, and then say, how can I improve that and really up the game standard of service? And the second way to do things is to be different. And I learned that from Dr. Amar Bose, the founder of Bose Corporation, because he had a great saying. He said, better implies different. So you can do 2 things as a 2-pronged strategy. Number one, build your own set of rules and values and your standards, not somebody else's standards, your standards, and then say, how can we be different? And this is one way to be different, just looking different. Sometimes just a different design or a slightly different spin is enough to differentiate you. So that's the two biggest things I can share with you right now. And they are powerful. Now, I've taught students here locally. You hear that Grant Cardone says about 10xing their businesses. I know people that have 100x their businesses using that strategy.
Awesome. There are people out there who goes, but look, I don't have the energy like you do. I'm not as outgoing as you are. I'm not an entrepreneur, but I really want to jump into that. I know your journey was actually pretty interesting because you didn't start off as an entrepreneur.
No. Well, yes and no, sort of, but go ahead.
Well, you had a few other different types of jobs, and then also you were in a band as well. And then you got into all this entrepreneurship and business training and stuff. Tell us that journey, and how did you kind of go from one to the other?
Well, that's kind of interesting. And it's funny you say that, well, I don't have your energy, but I'm 59 years old. So I like no excuses. Like energy is a state of mind. And really my energy is really derived from other people. I get my energy from interacting with other people. So, and it's also a life choice, because if you're going to be out in the marketplace, you've got to get your voice heard. You know, you can't light your, what's the saying in the Bible? You don't put your light under the bushel or something like that, is the expression I think it is. So you have to get used to becoming a self-promoter, which is a transitory thing, because when I was younger, like I said, a child, I was actually fairly shy. And the silly thing is you talk about playing in a band. Having a band was actually my first entrepreneurial adventure, because unlike being a broke musician, I had a working band when I was 17 years old.
Oh.
A working band for money. So I'd go to school, because I went to school at Austin O'Brien High School in Edmonton, Alberta. I think it's still there. It's a long time ago. And but on the weekend, like every weekend, I was playing at bars and taverns and stuff like that. And we were in a working band. We got paid for money. I could never understand being a musician and being broke, because it's the music business. And part of, funny enough, did you mention that one of the strategies I used, which is just what I described, was we had at that time one of the best known bands in Edmonton. And we played, in fact, all over Alberta, including Calgary, and further down south to Lethbridge and whatnot. But the strategy I had used is I went out and saw what the other bands were doing locally. And what I found was they had very poor stage lighting. Their stages were very shoddy. Their set lists weren't really good. They dressed badly. They never interacted with the audience, you know, because this is the days of live music. We're talking back in the late 1970s and 80s sort of thing. And so I took a look around and I said, I want to fix everything that's wrong with these acts. So what we did is we went out and bought terrific sound equipment. We picked stage lighting colors very, very carefully. We did set design, and our equipment was immaculate. It wasn't dirty. And then we all had really great costumes, because even in business, you're wearing a tie right now. I'm wearing this. These are costumes. And I've always said for years that all business is show business. And it really is. Because if you're in business and you don't show up, there's no business. And if you're in business and you don't put on a show, you're not going to get any business. And so I took that whole theory of show business. And in fact, very quickly, we became the premium hired band in Alberta by our agent. And it wasn't because we were the best band, because we did not have the best musicians. We had good musicians. But what I did was make us different. And by being different, we were perceived as being better.
Wow.
And so that's right there. That's a real life lesson on how you can incorporate stuff like that. And it was not like I had this amazing talent. It was more about situational awareness and saying, how can I make that better? Those musicians are better than me. So how can I best them? Well, I can't, they're better technically, but I sure as heck can put on a better show, you know, and have a greater entertainment factor. And so that was kind of it. But eventually, like you said, I ended up blowing out my vocal cords as a singer. So I had to get out of that business. And eventually led me to be a mailman for Canada Post, if you can imagine. A lot of people can't picture that, but I really did that, and for a few years at the Postal Service. And I don't want to, be long, overrate that story. This is a long story, but I left there because I was fed up with being in a government job, and I'd always been sort of entrepreneurial. So I'd gotten out of that business and went into the life insurance business because a friend had recruited me, and he said, you know what? You have an outgoing personality. You'd be great at sales. And there's kind of the misconception number two, Fong, is I was an outgoing personality, but I had no clue how to sell, because selling is a skill. And in fact, most salespeople are introverted, not extroverted, because they're more interested in the client versus being interesting to the client, which is a key distinction. Because if we're here selling somebody, a lot of people think that sales or marketing is all about trying to persuade somebody to buy something they don't want, don't need, feel pressured to do, all these sleazy tactics, so to speak. But in point of fact, a real professional salesperson is all about moving people from less to more. And it's also about removing the limiting or false beliefs in between that's helping your client get to where they want to go from less to more. So that's really what professional selling is. And there's nothing more noble than that. It's helping them get what they want. But as you know, because you're big into mindset, most of what keeps us from succeeding is either limiting or false beliefs or false assumptions. And by the way, a lot of neuromarketing deals with helping people dismantle limiting beliefs and false assumptions. So fast forward, I think it was 2002, my brother was trading in the Forex markets in those days. And we started to start a training company teaching people how to do Forex. And that evolved into an investment company where I brought in over 1,000 clients in US and Canada, and we were trading $100 million a day by the time I sold my interest in it. And then I kind of semi-retired, and it was around shortly after that I met you guys. Because I was recruited by the organization to become a coach when I was about 51 years old. And that's what led me to you. So there's the story. I mean, there's a lot of ups and downs you go through as an entrepreneur going through that. And I've said the greatest key to success, probably as an entrepreneur, is pain tolerance. It's like, how much pain can you take till you quit or win? And sometimes it's physical pain, sometimes it's financial pain, sometimes it's an emotional pain. But everyone, and Gary Vee has a different way of saying, I won't repeat it. He says, you have to get used to eating a great big pile of crap. But that's quite often what it takes to succeed. So there's my long-winded answer.
You mentioned before about the importance of showmanship and applying showmanship into business. Now, not a lot of people think about business as showmanship. What would be the main difference that you would have to do or kind of think about to apply showmanship into business?
Well, it's all about highlighting things in such a way that make them desirable. For example, when my wife used to do this, when you create store displays, for example, that's called merchandising. It's simply placing things and staging things. And there's a key word, stage again, staging things so that they look much more appealing. And this is part of, I think, I said one of the things that we've done is I started teaching people how to sell stuff from home, say on Facebook or Kijiji Marketplace, things like this. Most people, when they try and sell stuff online, they do a lousy job merchandising and staging. Their photos look terrible. Maybe they're selling used items and it's all dirty and grimy. Well, if all you do is photograph them properly and shine them up a little bit, obviously the person who's looking for that item online, yours is going to be the default choice. But my simplest example of show business is, now, granted, we've come in a world where we just come out of wearing masks and we're still having to deal with a lot of that stuff. But beforehand, one of the things I would teach people in business is an old Chinese proverb, which said that a man without a smile must not open up a shop. And that's a true proverb, and it's real for a reason. One of the things we know through neuromarketing is the primitive brain is always assessing, are you a threat?
Mhm.
Are you a friend or a foe? So every single person that you meet that approaches you, the brain is going, are they a friend or an enemy? Literally. And you see this all the time. Particularly, I think women find this more pronounced because women tend to be more on their guard when they're out socially. And that's just the way things are. So they tend not to, especially if a guy is coming towards them, for example, they tend not to want to engage in eye contact because now it's like, because you could be perceived as a threat. And there is physical, biological differences there, obviously. But one of the things that happens is when we smile, some amazing things happen to us. Our hormones increase. Inside of us, our serotonin increases, our oxytocin increases. We have all these feel-good hormones that increase. And what happens is human beings have what's called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons. So if I smile at you, my hormones fire off, and so do yours. So just by smiling at you, you instantly feel better, and your brain's risk perception of threat goes down. Now, there's a long scientific explanation. You know what the good bottom line is? If you simply smile at your customers when you deal with them and when you greet them, your sales are going to go up roughly by 33%.
Woo.
That's a fact. I've proven that over and over again. And here's the interesting thing. Even through the mask, it's actually more pronounced through a mask or on the telephone. Your brain is 20 times more sensitive to your smile when it's just coming through this auditory channel right here. Mm-hmm. So I've said, if you really want to be in show business, you got to smile like a superstar. And the reaction you get is immediately. It's just instantaneous. So that's the first rule of business, is a smile. And it sounds so simple, but I'm telling you, businesses today, they've lost millions of dollars because they have staff that say, can I help you? Mm-hmm. Right? You notice the difference in the problem. Yes. Can I help you? Versus, we have a pet food store locally here. We just lost one of our little kitties we've had for 19 years. But when this pet food store had opened up 5 years ago, we thought, my wife and I, let's go to the grand opening. Maybe we'll buy our stuff there for our pets. And the moment we walked in, the staff was like, hello, welcome to our store. Thank you so much for coming by. Take a look around. Hi, I'm Dan, I'm Connie or whatever, like this kind of thing. And we're like, wow. And as a business coach, I'm going, these guys are smart. And you know what? Every day until the day, literally the last day we went there because our cat had passed away, I opened the door and the owner, Dan, is like, Les, how are you? Good to see you. Lori, how are you doing today? Every day they would greet us like that. And you wonder why they have hundreds of customers shopping there. This is like, that's a no-brainer thing, no-brainer. And that's a simple way of employing, that's neuromarketing right there. But business is typically simple. It's the people that complicate it, right?
There's been a few things that you said so far that I think lots of introverts are like, yes, because one, you said introverts are actually better in sales. And then the other thing was that all you need to do is smile, which I'm sure a lot of introverts can actually apply to their daily lives.
Yeah, so. if you ask somebody a question and you just smile and shut up, first of all, as an introvert, that's really easy to do. And if you ask people about themselves, people love to talk about themselves. Mm-hmm. And so I can't tell you how many times I've been in a conversation where I ask somebody a question and then I just shut up and smile, and I wouldn't get a word in edgewise, which is unusual for me. But they'd say, "Oh, Les is the most brilliant conversationalist."
You talked about your energy is harnessed by other people and how your interactions go. So how do you generate that energy first thing in the morning? What's your routine?
You know what? I don't really have a routine for this per se. It's more of a conscious choice to express myself. Mm-hmm. This is an interesting thing because in society, we, and depending on the culture you're raised in, every culture is a little bit different, from North America to wherever, Europe, Australia, Asia, et cetera, et cetera. So we tend to get into these behavioral norms of what we think is acceptable in behavior. So typically, most people in real life are expressive, but not that expressive. There's kind of a limit there, unless it's your close friend or your mom, like, hey, this kind of thing. But it really came from me observing animals. For example, dogs. And I would notice that the minute, if you have a dog, I don't have a dog, but if you see a dog owner, the minute the dog owner gets home, the dog is like, and they're just so excited to see them. And I thought, wow. And then I would watch real professional, like rock stars or performers. When they get on stage, they're just absolutely delighted to see that person. And by doing that, when you're delighted to see somebody, they're delighted to see you. And I thought, well, why do we wait for special occasions for this? Why don't we just turn this on at will? And you can express yourself in a way that's genuine. It doesn't have to be sloppy or false or, kind of a fake thing. It can be a genuine, wow, I'm great to see you. And this is always my approach as a speaker. When I got on stage, I was genuinely excited to see the people, because I consider it an honor to speak to people. To me, I love, the fact that you've asked me to be on your podcast here. I'm flattered. I'm thrilled. So why wouldn't I be happy about that? So I thought, as an approach to life, it just makes your life so much more pleasant and interesting. Because, well, hello, how are you? And to take a sincere interest in other people is the biggest thing. And you'll find the most successful people in the world are, generally speaking, they're like that. They want to bring that energy to you. I love sharing that energy, because what I've discovered, Fong, is the most priceless commodity in the world is not gold or silver or anything like that. It's feelings. People will spend anything to feel. We spend money to go to a movie. Why? Because we want to feel stuff. To go to a concert. Why? Because we want to feel. Why do you want to fall in love? Because it's a beautiful feeling. Why do you want to have children? Because children bring you all sorts of feelings. Some of them aren't that great. You know what I mean?
You need to have those bad feelings to actually feel those good feelings.
To counteract it, to get the contrast, yeah. But it's like, if you can make people feel, this is what I learned a long time ago. If you can make people feel something, an emotional connection, and you're the business person, and let's say you got a competitor here, you're rice and rice, let's say, right? To use an example, they can't tell the difference between you and the other pet store, for example. But if you're like my friend Dan there, he's like jumping and so glad to see you. Well, where do you think I'm going to shop? I'm going to go to the place that I feel attention given to me. And this is like, if you look at relationships, and business is always relationships, when we're falling in love with somebody, we're so attentive. We adore that person. Isn't that true? And we want to give them everything, because we want to express ourselves fully to them.
Yeah.
And then as years go by, it's like Christmas, anniversary, and then you wonder why that falls apart. So when I equate that to show business, is you can't just do that when you're in the romance stage of meeting your customers. You have to be with them all the time like that.
Yeah.
Because they want to rekindle that feeling. And I'm truly, truly serious about that. You can have an inferior product to your competition, but if you make them feel better, they're going to come to you. That's my theory.
You kind of alluded to some of the challenges that COVID has brought on. One, with the mask, you can't smile anymore. But it is a challenge for a lot of people with regards to their businesses and also to run their businesses. What are some of the things that you've done to kind of mitigate around the whole pandemic and everything that's happening right now?
I guess for me, what I wanted to do in my capacity as a coach, for example, is I wanted to I took a step back. I didn't jump right in and say, here's Coach Les to the rescue. I didn't want, because I saw a lot of that happening online. Oh, we have the answer. Because you're getting online. I'm like, whoa. Let's just take a step backwards here and find out what we're trying to deal with. Take a little bit of a more analytical approach. And what I had kind of come to the conclusion was that, well, of course, not every business is going to work right now. B is if they're going to go online, they're going to have two problems. Is number one, we live in a very, very noisy world, and people today, it's just so much more clutter to get through, right? And the second problem I identified is obviously there's going to be an what's the word, an odyssey or avalanche or apocalypse of people trying to get online. So you're going to have even more and more people getting online, and then how are they going to differentiate themselves? Because everybody's, like I said before, looking around at what everybody else does. And the challenge I saw, particularly with the people that I've worked with, they're like, well, we got to create content, right? And I was like, yeah, but there's so much of it out there already, and you can go today, you can learn anything you want to learn on YouTube or a podcast. Yeah. It's like, you want how to build a nuclear weapon. Yeah, they got a podcast for that. You could be the first one on your block to blow your block up. So what I found was, and this is what I started teaching my students, is I said, to deliver value doesn't mean you don't necessarily have to deliver a how-to thing. Sometimes what's more valuable than a how-to is to shift someone's perspective, to give them a different way of looking things, to change a limiting belief or a false assumption, for example. Like one of them, you said, well, gee whiz, I don't have the energy. Well, okay, I just broke that right there. I'm 59 going on 60, so just spare me the nonsense, right? It's a choice. And I don't have any magical formula of diet or anything like that. It's really about giving yourself permission to fully express yourself and not be afraid of that. That's what it's really all about. Right. And I'm not like this all the time. When it's appropriate, I do that. I'm lower key, obviously. I'm not like, hey, when I'm in the grocery store, save that for the
You mean you don't sit down and go, time for dinner?
No. My wife is, sit down and shut up. The food's ready. No, she's not like that at all. I'm just kidding.
Now, if you were on the world stage again, and you have everybody listening to you, the next few words that come out of your mouth is what you want everybody to remember you for. What would those words be?
Change the way you look at the world, and the world will change the way it looks at you. That's it.
Very
that was powerful. Fast. Well, what it really boils down to, because again, I spent the last couple of years really, and I noticed, and I called you out on this. I was really impressed at the fact that you were studying cognitive biases. I'm impressed because I'm the only other nerd I know that studies that stuff. And why is that important? Well, cognitive biases are shortcuts our brains use to create belief systems. Because as I was saying before, this thing has too much work to do already. So our brain comes up with a lot of different belief systems. But the truth of the matter is beliefs 99% of the time are just that. They're not necessarily facts. A lot of times beliefs are simply an interpretation of something. Like we make an observation of something, and then we kind of make an assumption and say, well, because of this, that happened. And then we take to make some kind of a moral judgment on it, and it becomes a belief. But unfortunately, they're not necessarily true. And I'm not talking about religious beliefs. I'm just talking in the context of, say, life beliefs, personal beliefs, or business beliefs. And it is our perspective that changes a belief. Like how many times have you had a belief that you grew up with, and then all of a sudden one day it changes and you believe the complete opposite, right? And the cool thing about human beings is we have the ability to change our perspective. So I've said, like, sometimes if you're in South Africa or something and you have a lion here and a gazelle here, they only have one viewpoint. The lion is saying, there's the gazelle and there's lunch. And right, that's the viewpoint. And a lion can't change that. The gazelle is saying, I'm a gazelle, there's a lion, and if I don't get out of here, I'm lunch. That's the viewpoint they have. But human beings, we get to redefine what something means. So if you change the way you look at the world, it doesn't necessarily change world circumstances, but it changes your ability to deal with things. For example, if you are on the Titanic and the Titanic's going down back in 1912, no amount of wishful thinking is going to change the fact that that ship is going to sink. So you can accept a worldview that, oh my God, we're going to die and it's going to go down. Or you can accept a worldview, a different perspective, and say, you know what? I think there's a possibility here. There's a chance. And just by shifting that perspective, you say, now you become much more resourceful. So instead of being in a negative, destructive act, you're now in a resourceful state. And you're going, what can we use? What can we use? Who do we need? What can we use? And I found the very biggest things in business quite often is not how to do something, because you go, how do I do this? And how is kind of a destructive question. But if you say, what resources do I have? What do I need? Who do I need? What do I need? Who do I need? Because you can accomplish anything if you know what you need and who do I need to do this with. Because that's all about a teamwork equation. When you say the word how, it's like, how the hell am I going to do all this stuff myself, as opposed to a team question, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Good stuff and good words to live by. I know you're a busy guy. I got 5 very quick questions, rapid fire, and just tell me the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
Number 1, you're stranded on a desert island. You can have one food for the rest of your life, no consequence. What would that be?
I don't know why, but oranges popped into my mind.
You're on a road trip, and this is a long, long road trip. And you got one song that's stuck in the tape deck or the CD player or whatever and plays over and over again. What is that one song you don't mind listening to that you will never get sick of?
Don't Stop Believing by Journey.
Awesome. Hollywood calls and says, hey, Les, we're going to do a biopic on you. Who do you want to be casted as your best friend?
Ooh, boy, that's a tough one. Cast as my best friend. The actor? I don't know. Maybe Josh Lucas. I'm a big fan of him as an actor. Yeah.
All right. So Josh Lucas just shows up to your door and says, hey, I need to get to know you better so I can play this part well. But first, I'm hungry. So what would you prepare for him as your special dish?
That'd be easy. Steak. I make great steak. Fabulous steak.
Awesome. And my last question is, what is success like? But give me a number between 1 to 4.
Sorry?
Give me a number between 1 to 4.
3 and 1 to 4?
A number between 1 to 4.
2.
1, 2. So how is success similar to clogs?
Clogs? What is a clog?
Let's try this again. Number between 1 to 3.
I mean, there's 2 types of clogs. There's a clog as a clogged artery, and there's clogs as shoes. So
let's go with the shoes. How is success like those shoes?
Oh, well, it's all about dancing to the beat of your own drummer. There you go.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you very much. Any last words from you?
No, I just want to thank you very much for having me on here. It's been a total blessing and a blast. And I want to wish everyone who may be listening the very best, and keep your chin up. And remember, one of the greatest difficult things in business or life is perseverance, but perseverance really, really, really pays off. At the end of the day, it's the person who can. It's all about being mental toughness and how much can you take until you quit. And that's pretty much it. So thank you very much.
And what's the best way to reach out to you?
Oh, you can find me on social media. I'm on Les Evans Official. It's the same thing on Instagram, Les Evans Official. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, any of those places. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I've had a really great time. Your energy is absolutely contagious, and I had a lot of fun with this. So thank you for your time and all your stories.
You're right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
For everybody else, he is Les Evans. My name is Fong. Until next time, today is the day to lock your peak potential. I'll see you later.